Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Sikalis. Hope everybody's doing well. And from what it looks like, this is probably going to be the last live stream of 2020. I don't know if everybody else has had enough of 2020, but I definitely have. It's been quite a year. Could use a lot of adjectives, but it's been quite a year. It's been quite a difficult, tough time for everybody. I think I'm not the only one when I'm saying that I think I'm very happy to see 2020 close and not have to look back. Unfortunately, we will have to look back, especially in the real estate world, because the ramifications and the effects that we've had um, because of everything we went through in 2020 is going to be a factor for not only next year, but for many years to come. And if you're seeing me looking to the side as I'm doing this, it's only because I'm trying to work with two monitors at the same time. And hopefully, it doesn't look too bizarre the way I'm looking at it. I promise you, within a minute or two, you're going to get my full focus. But I don't want to have more dead air like I did 5 minutes ago of just talking and nobody knowing what I was doing. So, like I said, give me a second and I will be coming back on at your full attention in a moment. So, why am I doing this live stream? The reason why is I think that it's absolutely necessary to give like a full blown prediction and forecast for what's happening right now going into 2021. A lot of people have come out with multiple predictions. They pulled out the crystal balls and they basically are telling a lot of people what their theories are, where their thoughts are, and some of it is valid, some of it is really reaching. And I'm going to break down the entire real estate market right now for everybody. And I'm going to break it down in a way where I don't think any other people on YouTube or any of the other platforms has really um, done, because everybody's looking at it from a broad picture, a very big picture kind of a thing. And the truth be said, the real estate market is not only about one sector. Not There's not only one specific part of it that's being affected. A lot of parts and a lot of components of the real estate market are being affected in many different ways. So I'm going to make sure that I give everybody of as thorough of an outlook as possible to be able to give everybody a good understanding of what it is that we are um, looking at and how to be able to approach this, because we're going to have to approach this in a specific way. This is not going to be um, something that we're going to get a lecture that's going to be taking care of everything all in one shot. There's no vaccine for what this market's going to go through right now. It's going to go through a very different type of situation, and hopefully I could make it as clear to everybody as humanly possible. And I'll make it. It's not going to be all doom and gloom. There's all different things that we're looking at right now. And while we're going through the stream, if anybody wants to put a comment, ask me questions, I'm gonna keep this open for Q&A for anybody that's has something they'd like to talk to me about. I'll make sure that I'm on everything. Like I said, I'm a little bit distracted because of the sheer fact that I'm using a completely different play. It only took me, I don't know how many months to finally figure out how to make this work. I'm gonna keep the. So I'm gonna. This is unbelievable. But there we go. I just opened up my chat box so I could look at anybody putting in chats. There we go. Hopefully this works. And if it doesn't work, I'm gonna look like a buffoon. So, okay. Finally, I think I got it running the way it needs to be. It's a different environment. One of the things that you're seeing behind me is a new background that we put together. I think it's really fitting putting a dark brick background to end this year out. Like I said, we got 1 day left of 2020. Hopefully, no real crazy things happen, and we'll be able to end this nasty chapter, miserable year, and look on to bigger and better things. But let's get into it. The first thing is the housing market, like mentioned earlier, is something that we have to tackle in components. So we might as well start off with the residential sector. And the residential sector right now in many different areas is being set in a momentum in very different directions. And what I mean by that is I'll give you a full example, for like perfect example actually. New York is a tale of two cities. It really is. And you have a scenario where a lot of people are continuing to leave New York City, not only New York, but New York City, although there are plenty of people leaving New York altogether. But that's a topic for another day, and a situation that is constantly getting worse and worse right now. And that has to do a lot with our local situation, the way the laws are, the taxes are. But we're going to tackle that another day. We're not going to get too into that. We're just going to talk about what the state of the market is and how this is going to be reflected going to 2021. So you have a situation where people are leaving New York City and they're going anywhere outside of the city. It's the escape from New York mentality. I've said this in past videos, and what you're seeing is a scenario where people are leaving. They're going to the suburbs. They're going to the outskirts of the city. They're going upstate, downstate, anywhere they can. Long Island, Westchester, Rochester. And big reason for that is one, this pandemic, this coronavirus that we're going through right now has made people skeptical and wary of wanting to be in congested areas, in very tightly packed areas with millions of people, and not being able to have their space, not being able to go outside and feel comfortable that they're not going to have 100 people trample them that might be having coronavirus. This is a real mindset right now. I'm saying it a little bluntly, and excuse me if I'm saying it a little bit crude, but it's basically what's happening. And what you're seeing is that mindset is in place. And it was a very similar mindset that what we had during 9/11 when we got hit by those planes. And people, again, at that time had the mindset of escaping New York and getting out of the congested areas and getting away from the target areas and that kind of thing. But the big difference between then and now is people got together. They became more tightly knit. People started to back each other up. There was more of a community feel during that time. Now there's a lot of animosity going on. There's a lot of anger. Um, People aren't happy about being locked down. People are not happy about being in a congested area and not being able to actually use all the resources that the city um, once offered. During 9/11, you had some of the big public venues closed down for an extended period, but nothing nearly as close as what happened now. Uh, they can't use the restaurants. They can't use the bar scenes, the lounges, the movie theaters, the gyms, the cafes, the theaters, the museums, the parks, etc., etc. You're living in a city that has all these resources, and that's the reason you moved to the city, and you can't take advantage of them. And people are really looking at that deeply and saying to themselves, we don't want to be here. So you're having that mentality in place, and you have people for months upon months upon months that have been evacuating. And what has happened was the inventory that was in place already in the suburbs and the outskirts of the city have already been low in the first place. And what happened is the buyers are coming out in droves, and the amount of inventory, the amount of homes that are available can't keep up, and the ones that are going on the market are not keeping up at the same pace. I've said this in the past, and I really believe it. In order for us to come to a healthy market where there's a balance between supply and demand, we really have to have about 2.5 homes come onto the market for every one that comes off the market in order to bring ourselves to a healthy balance again. And it's not happening at this point. Well, we're also in winter right now, so you have a little bit of the winter effect happening, but we're definitely not getting the kind of inventory that we once were as far as people putting their homes on the market. And big reason for that is the fact that a lot of people, they have a hard time putting their house on the market when they don't know where they're going to be moving to. So you have a lot of that happening as well. Yeah, you have people saying, "Well, if I sell, where am I going to move to? There's nothing out there that fits my needs." Or if there is something out there, they're going to pay astronomical numbers. Yes, they're going to sell for high numbers, but they're going to be buying for high numbers. And in many cases, especially if they're moving up, those high numbers of the move up number are going to be way too high for them to be able to get into. So it's a very tough situation. And I don't see this changing in the near term. So everybody that's talking about housing in 2021 have to look at the big picture, especially with the residential market the way it's going. There's a lot of different factors in place. I just mentioned this escape from New York mentality, and then escaping from New York mentality doesn't only hold for New York. It's happening in other major states, major metros, where people are doing the same kind of thing. It's happening in California. You hear it all the time. And that's the one thing that you actually hear in the media that's actually pretty on target for what's happening. People are leaving from these places. They're either leaving the states completely or they're going to suburbia or more rural areas. Every state has its own reasons, but the biggest reason and the biggest catalyst for a lot of this that happened has been a lot of these restrictive mandates that have been put in place in the major metro areas and the major cities. Unfortunately, like I said, it's not one of those things that um, I'm happy about talking about because I'm a New Yorker through and through. I grew up here. I was born here. Um, I hate seeing people leave the city because I love New York, and I don't want people to leave. I want people to come. I want it to continue to be a thriving city, a place that people are eager to want to live in, and you know, if they, the whole thing about if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. Well, it was true up until this year. Now we're going to see how everything goes forward. But what I'm seeing right now, and this is for general, it's not only for New York, but it's in general for the entire uh, country. We're probably going to see a lot more of this depletion of inventory going forward for the next few months. And we're going to definitely, in my personal opinion, have a deficit of supply and demand over the next 6 months conservatively. It may go up until the end of the year. And it's going to take a while for everything to level out. And until that happens, prices are going to continue going up. It's just, economics 101. Anybody that's ever taken economics 101 knows supply and demand. The less the inventory, the higher the demand, the higher the price. Super simple. And it's tough. It's super tough for a lot of the buyers out there. My heart goes out to a lot of the people that really want to buy a place. They have the money, they have the means to be able to buy the place, and they keep getting squeezed out of places because they're having bidding wars and they're having a hard time getting offers accepted. It's a super hard thing that's happening right now. And it's not a fun market to be in if you're a buyer. It definitely is. As far as a seller, you know, you're doing okay. You're getting your numbers. I mean, you have some people that are delusional right now, and they're basically um, thinking to themselves that they're gonna name their price and get it. It's not necessarily that. That's not the case. You know, the price, the value of a place, of a home, of a property, is only what the public says it's going to be. And if the public is willing to pay for it, the buyers are willing to pay for it, that's the new value. If they're not willing to pay for it, that means you're overpriced. And you're getting a lot of people testing the waters like that. You have a lot of inventory out there that it's grossly overpriced and they're not selling. And everybody's wondering, like, why are they not selling and everything else is selling? Well, it's because they're grossly overpriced. The stuff that sits and lingers on the market for extended periods of time in this kind of market has one of two things going wrong for it. One, it's either grossly overpriced, as I mentioned, or there's some kind of defect or issue with the place. And it could be a few things. So as far as the defect or issue, it could be structural defects, it could be something that you could physically see, or there's issues with deeds and that kind of stuff. So you're going to have some of that. And, don't let those homes deceive you, because they're basically, you're going to get those kind of places at all markets. But my bold prediction, this market's going to stay hot for at least the first half of the year. And it's probably going to start tapering off third quarter going into the fourth quarter. But we're not going to see the true effects of any kind of decline in values or in sales or significant decline until 2022, most likely. That's my prediction. I might be wrong. This is all recorded. It's live stream. It's going to stay on this YouTube world. You can look back at it and you can call me out on it. That's probably going to be the case, in my personal opinion. And like I said, put a comment down below. Let me know what you think. And if you feel that I'm completely off base, please let me know. You feel that uh, you have a better prediction, your crystal ball is better than mine, let me know. Let's see. It's not a question of who's going to be right or wrong. It's a question of how it's going to be. That being said, I know that there's going to be people that are going to jump down my throat and say, well, there's going to be so many foreclosures coming down the line. And I briefly went into that in one of the past videos as far as what the situation with the foreclosures is going to be. And what's going to happen with the foreclosure market is something that, if you think of it in an illogical way, you'll start to understand. There's millions of homes right now throughout the country that are in arrears as far as their mortgage payments are concerned. Some are getting forbearance. Some of them, they're just in arrears. Some of them are trying to modify right now. Some of them are trying to refi. Some of them are not being paid because the people just don't have any income coming in. And for the most part, a lot of these homes have been held back from being foreclosed on. One, because they're still new and they really have to go through the system. I'm not talking about the homes that were on the foreclosure block prior to the national emergency that was declared in March. As far as this pandemic is concerned, I'm going to keep talking about the pandemic. I'm going to keep talking about the coronavirus, unfortunately, because that's a big catalyst of what's happened. The reasons these things are happening. So, that being said, these homes are still new. They got to go through the system in order to go through the foreclosure process. That's one. There's been a lot of mandates and a lot of restrictions that have held back foreclosures on these type of homes. And they're continuing to go that way. And even when everything lifts, believe me, the courts are going to be so backlogged, so extremely backlogged, that it's going to make it extremely difficult to get them all through the system in a timely fashion. The other thing is, I could guarantee you that whoever is in office in 2021 and the Congress and the Senate and the president and everybody, the elected officials, they're going to be in a situation where they're going to be forced to find a way to work with the banks and to have the banks come to a meeting of minds with a lot of these people that have been out of work or were sick or were ideal homeowners and they were paying their mortgage payments perfectly up until February, March of 2020. They're going to find things like that, things to do to be able to prevent a lot of that happening. And at the same time, they're also going to probably give incentives to the banks or workarounds with the banks. They did something very similar in 2008, 2009 when we had that mortgage meltdown and financial crisis. Now, there were a lot of houses that went on that were foreclosed at that time. But there was a big difference back then and right now. A lot of this that is happening what is not happening because of banks being greedy or uh, a lot of people not doing the right thing, which you had a lot of that in 2008, 2009, where people were buying a lot of houses undocumented, without documentation, stated income, those kind of things. Banks were basically giving loans out to people. If you had a pulse, you were getting a loan at that time. Simple as that. But that being said, you had a situation where you have, these homes that might not have to go through foreclosure if one the government finds a way to somehow work with the banks as far as keeping them going, because obviously they need the income as well in order to stay solvent, because the last thing you need is a bunch of defaults happening on loans they gave out, and now banks are collapsing. We've gone through these things before. We had the SNL crisis in the 80s, and the financial crisis in the 2008. I mean, these things, are serious, and they need to be addressed in a very gingerly and a very logical type of fashion. So the people that are thinking to themselves, there's going to be a flood of foreclosures, it's not going to be to the levels that people think that it's going to be. There's going to be foreclosures that get in the market. We might get a spike of foreclosures hitting on a month-to-month basis that is higher than what normally is done without any external issues going on. And the only reason for that is because the courts, as I mentioned, are backlogged, and you have a lot of people, a lot of cases that were pending prior to being locked down, prior to the quarantines, prior to the courts shutting down, prior to the mandates and the moratoriums that have been put in place. And those are going to be the first ones that are going to be in line. So when those houses hit, because they've been sitting and stockpiled and they haven't, been, you know, processed and gone through the system the way they normally would, you're going to have a glut of those. So you're going to get a bunch of those hit the market. Doesn't necessarily mean that it is going to hurt the market as far as devaluing it, because one, you have to look at what the buyer mentality is at this point. You have a ton of investors looking for properties, and because the price is escalating consistently right now, you have no inventory for these investors, for these flippers, for these builders, for these developers, people that are looking to purchase, rehab, or rebuild, or knock down and put up new houses up. There's not enough for them out there. So some of these foreclosures will fit that need for them. Because don't forget, a lot of times when homes are foreclosed, they're not necessarily in the greatest condition. They're not for the general consumer. Yeah, you could go get a rehab loan, 2 or 3K loan in order to purchase it, but not every buyer, actually the majority of buyers out there, are not with the mindset of taking on a place and doing a complete project. One, it's a little overwhelming for a lot of people. Two, they might not have the resources and the time to be able to do that. And three, they just might not have the mindset or the stomach to be able to handle that, because it's an ordeal. It's not for everybody. Some will, but not many. So those foreclosures, especially the ones that need excessive amount of work, or they're dilapidated, or the extreme ones, that's going to feed the investors some of their needs. So that's going to start settling out and working its way out. The other stuff, the immaculate houses, the ones that are pristine or are in relatively good condition with minor things that need to be done, those are not going to be enough to overwhelmingly level out the supply and demand. So it's going to take time for that to happen. Now, as we go into spring, and we might see more and more of these coming up, and then slowly sellers or homeowners decide it's time. I got to put the house on the market. That's the time you're going to see. It's going to be make or break time at that point. You're going to see March, April, May, June. These are the months. It's going to be make or break time. Depending on how many houses hit the market at that time is going to show us what's going to happen for the third and fourth quarter. And that's why I'm heavily standing by my thoughts of the first half of the year is going to be a lot more of the same that we've been going through. It's just the way it looks like it's going to be going on. Now, going to 2021 is when we're going to start seeing 2022, I'm sorry, are going to be the times we're going to be seeing more of these homes that have been affected by people that lost their jobs or got sick, or knock on wood, I'm sorry for everybody that lost somebody, but the homeowners that died during this time and maybe don't even have anybody there, and the banks are taking these properties back at that point. 2022 is when we're going to start seeing that kind of stuff start filtering, and even then, you're not going to get on everything. It's just not going to happen. If everything that was in default at this very moment were to get foreclosed, I'm not even going to say overnight, within a month period, forget about bubbles bursting, forget about disasters. It's going to be an absolute collapse of not only the real estate market, our economy. So it's not going to happen in that fashion. It's just not. As much as I disagree with a lot of the things our politicians do, our officials, don't get me started on how much I don't like a lot of our policies. They're not complete idiots. Some of them are, but they're not complete idiots to actually let something like this happen. They know what the ramifications are going to be. It'll be the apocalypse if that happens. So it's not going to happen. So that's my thoughts. That's my thought process on how that's going to go about. But don't let the doom and gloom hit you as far as thinking that the foreclosure avalanche is going to come, because it will be slower than people expect. Now, there's another factor that's going to be halting the market from completely taking a dive, and that's the low interest rates. We're still, I've said this a million times, we're still at historical lows. And they're not going to jump the interest rates overnight. They're just not. It's going to be in slow increments. Even if we get to where we were last year, as far as interest, that's still low. There's still incentive for people to purchase places. So that's going to continue to slow it down. It's just how it happens. It's just how it is. So I'm not going to dwell on the interest rates, because that's pretty much self-explanatory as far as what we're dealing with. Will it play a factor when the interest rates start to rise? Yeah, it will. But don't expect that until the second half of next year, if that actually happens, second half of next year. It's going to take a while for everybody. Look at this. I'm like glitching out. Like, as good as this technology is, it's still weird. I don't know. Anybody else having the same issues I'm having with Zoom? Like I said, it took me a whole year to try to figure out how to use these digital backgrounds and make everything fancy and uh, get myself technologically in 2020. But still looks a little shaky, looks a little weird. There's definitely room for a lot of this stuff to be worked on. So let's jump on to the next topic. Retail. Everybody knows small businesses have been clobbered. Absolutely clobbered. They've been, for lack of a better words, decimated. Not only has this sickness that we're going through really, put a fear in these people in society, but the mandates that were put in place by our politicians, by our officials, that have severely, severely handicapped on disturbing levels these small business owners and the large businesses as well. Don't get me wrong. This is not only about small businesses, it's about all businesses. All retail business has been strongly, strongly hampered. Now, have there been a few businesses that have thrived? Yes. Have there been a few businesses that have done better now than they ever did? Absolutely. But they're limited. A lot of the takeout businesses that were already set up for takeout are doing great because they already had a system in place. They're ready to go. But not all restaurants, not all eateries had that system in place. Even the grocery stores that you think that should be thriving, a lot of them, because of the mandates and because of this lack of size, and because of the regulations put in place of how much distance you have to have from one person to the other, have hampered how many people they could have in the place at the same time. And anybody that knows how a lot of the grocery stores here in New York are, or the bodegas and the little delis and that kind of thing, a lot of them are super tight. You can't have social distancing in these places without limiting it to like 2-3 people at a time, maybe in some of these places, because there are little holes in the wall. The rent is astronomical for a lot of these places, and they have their small space, and they did okay. They were just getting through with the business they did. But when you really stop people from going into these places, and I'm not saying that distancing and giving you people the space needed to not keep spreading this disease is a right thing to do. It is a right thing to do because that's what we know at this time. We don't know a lot. That's the biggest problem. Everything this year has been trial and error with a lot of stuff, but the problem was a lot of these places had to close, or they had to set themselves up in a way to protect everybody with barriers and spacing and keeping 6 feet distance and that kind of thing. And a lot of the places weren't equipped to be able to do it. They didn't have the money to be able to get the resources to set up the place and get the plexiglass, because that stuff, they were gouging everybody during this time with the protection and everything. Forget about what I was paying for masks and sanitizer and gloves and goggles and whatever you needed to protect yourself. They were gouging everybody for the first few months on that because of the scarcity, and then you had people really taking advantage at that point and charging whatever it was they wanted. The restaurateurs and the business owners that had to put in special barriers and plexiglass and that kind of stuff were getting gouged even more because Well, I'm not gonna, I'm gonna take away the word gouged, because they didn't necessarily get gouged, because if you have a business that just can't keep up with the demand, and there's not enough materials out there, it goes back to supply and demand. Everything goes up in price. So these retail businesses have been really, really clobbered, and this is happening all across the nation. Everybody's seeing the news feeds and the reports from the media stating how the small business owners are really being devastated. And even before that, retail was taking a major hit. Even before all these mandates, retail was not in the greatest shape. Again, I'm not going to put a one size fits all where all businesses were going through rough times, but a lot were. And because of that fact that they're already going through hard times, a lot of places closed their doors and never reopened. So, what's that going to mean for 2021 in the retail sector? It's going to basically mean that we have a scenario, we have an issue where there's going to be a lot of vacancy out there, because there's going to be many businesses that are never going to reopen their doors. Now, does that mean that retail is completely dead? No. It's going to have to be very different. It's going to take a few years to recover from this. It's not going to happen overnight. And I can't even say that we're going to have a bubble burst or a collapse in the retail sector, because honestly, we're kind of there right now in a lot of different aspects. All we're going to see is more of what's happening right now amplified. And it's not going to be 1 year, it's not going to be 2 years. It's going to be a few years where we're going to see this ongoing problem happening. And I will say something. A lot of people want to blame the online businesses like Amazon and that that have destroyed retail. And I have to be honest with you, I don't believe that's the case. I believe that many retail businesses didn't help themselves while this whole internet boom was happening, and everybody was getting more involved with the online sales and refused to get themselves more involved in that sector. I think that had a huge effect on where they are right now. I also believe that any size business, you need to continue to look how to evolve. So if you're doing what worked 10 years ago today with no changes in most businesses, that's not going to work. You need to evolve. You need to use what's available out there. So a lot of these businesses did it to themselves. Not all, but a lot of them did. I'm also going to say one other thing. The big stores, like the Best Buys and that type of place. I'm going to make a I'm going to make a bold prediction. These big box type of settings, these stores are not going to continue in the same way they've been traditionally working for the past few decades. You have places like Best Buy, the PC Richards, the different type of outlets like this, the big boys as far as what they're selling, whether it's electronics, whether it's um, appliances, or if you have the department stores like the Macy's or the Lord and Taylor's, which Lord and Taylor's, the one by me, actually just shut its doors, which was a shock to me. But these department stores, these big box electronic stores, I strongly believe what's going to happen is they're going to start consolidating. And this is my prediction. Over the next 5 years, I really believe this is the model they're going to be taking. And if they haven't thought about it, I wouldn't mind getting a little bit of credit when you take my idea and actually do it. I feel that the way these places need to continue is to consolidate their spaces. They don't necessarily need a big, huge brick and mortar in every single town. Online sales have taken that away. They don't need that. What they need is to have large showroom kind of things where I'll use Best Buy as an example. You have a huge Best Buy, more spaced out. Like instead of having it in one town, every town or every other town, you have it every 3, 4 towns, and it has to do with the miles and that kind of how many miles away from each other they are. And and you have that place solely for the fact of having physical items, especially the new stuff in those places, as showroom. And it gives people the opportunity to be able to go take a look at the products. If they need it that moment and they can't wait for our online delivery, they could go pick it up. Or if they order it online and they don't want it to be delivered, they could order it from the business, go pick it up from the location, and they'll be in a good shape at that point. And a blend of these huge showroom type of brick and mortars, along with a healthy, well designed online sales platform, will allow these businesses to continue to grow. So you're going to continue to need certain type of retail settings. But in those kind of situations, it's not going to be as abundant as it been in the past. And that's the way these companies are going to continue to survive, grow, and still be relevant. Now, as far as the smaller type of retail spaces and that kind of thing, I really think the way that we're going to be going over the next 5 to 10 years is going back to the basics. I think service is going to be a huge factor. Um, Being dependable, giving the consumer a very good experience is going to be a very big factor. So I think boutique, mom and pops, specialty type of stores, if done the right way, will thrive and grow. And I'm going to emphasize one more time, service is going to make a big, big difference. It's going to make a huge difference. And the reason why I say that is we've kind of gone away from that over the past couple decades. You know, when you had a salesperson in one of these stores that would come answer all your questions, they were knowledgeable, they knew what they were talking about. Um, they would help guide you. They would help you with the products. Um, some cases they'll carry your stuff as you're walking through the place. That's all service oriented. It gave a much better experience. Now you basically go into, I don't mean to bash on Best Buy, but I go into Best Buy, I'm looking for something, and I'm looking all over the place trying to find a salesperson to help me or somebody that knows what they're talking about to help me decide, do I need this cable for this television or do I need this for that? And there's nobody there to answer the same question. Same problem that happens in the Home Depots, and that's why they're having a big issue. Not now, because now people are buying materials like hell, but once this whole current situation we have, Home Depot is going to be another thing that we're going to deal with in the future. But the service element is something that is missing. And once the smaller places, once the boutiques, the specialty shops start to figure that out and start to provide that long missed service, I believe retail is going to start to take it get take its new way of operating. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think I am, because that's one thing that you can't duplicate with a online service. That's one thing you can't get from a virtual type of scenario. You just can't do that. One of the reasons why online sales have not dominated car dealerships at this moment is because you still need that service for that type of product. I don't know about people listening right now or anybody else, but if I'm going to go buy a car, I need to go and sit in the car and see if I fit in the car. And I need to know if it makes sense for me, maybe test drive it. How everything's, the height, everything. I need to kind of figure that out. And yeah, I know there's services out there that they'll send it to you. You could drive it around, and if you don't like it, you send it back and get a refund or whatever the case is. But that doesn't work when you don't know exactly what it is you want. You know, if you're buying a car, maybe you put on, you know, 20, 30 pounds since the last time you bought a car. You know what you're going to fit into the right way. They're cutting the cars in different heights and sizes and widths. You don't know what's going to work. You have all these new features. Everything is going digital, electronic in all these cars. You know how these things work. You want to go there and have a salesperson show you what all the gimmicks, all the little gadgets and all the stuff that's inside a car, how it works, and get a feel. Like, is this a car for you? Is it too complicated for you? Or is it a headache? Whatever the case is, that's all part of the shopping experience. So that's one of the reasons why that business is still in many people's minds archaic, but it's not, because it's part of the service. Now, for businesses like, I need a pair of socks, you know, Hanes pairs of a pair of socks that I know what they are. Yeah, you're going to order them online because you know exactly what it is that you're ordering, and you're not going to have an issue ordering something like that. But there's other things like, you're not going to go to the tailor online. They do have apps for that. They do have businesses that operate like that. They can work with you online. They take all your dimensions, that kind of thing. But again, you have people that still want the service, and you have a young group of people that don't even know what they're missing. A lot of these millennials and younger people don't realize what they're missing by not having that service. And once they experience having better service, somebody catering to what it is that they need when they go into a retail type of environment, they're going to realize it and they're going to appreciate it. And if they don't, there'll be other people that will, because that's the one intangible that's being missed right now. And it's right in front of our faces. In my industry, in the real estate industry, yeah, you could be cold, you could be impersonal, you could um, be indifferent, but you're only going to get so far being like that. In my business, it's about being customer oriented, service oriented, giving people the attention they need. Otherwise, they might as well list a place themselves and sell it. We're the ones that take the headaches away from them. We're the ones that guide them and give them a better picture of what the market is doing, and share our expertise with them, and actually physically do the work and pick up the phone and guide them. Because if we don't do that, then again, they might as well go through the whole online thing. Because that's one thing that never bothered me, that a lot of people are outraged about, the discount brokerages and the online type of situations. That's okay. If you have somebody that it's only about how much they're going to pay commission scale, and they don't care about anything else, even if they get less money, that nothing's going to change their mind. And you're not going to devalue your service, or it's going to get to a point where you just can't afford to do your job for any less, because it's going to cost you more in marketing and time and effort and that kind of thing. So, you know, it's going to come down to service. The person that offers a better service is going to be the person that gets the most amount of work. Simple as that. And the best quality work as well. So the same theory, the same concept can be applied to just about any other platform in the retail sector, in the sales sector, in the service sector. Customer service. That's how retail is going to survive. That's how retail is going to evolve. It's going to go back to the basics. Full circle. The one thing I learned in life and that I use as a policy is real estate really does work in full circle. Trends, concepts, ideas that worked in the past, even though they become obsolete going around, they'll find a way to come back around and work out again. Just how it is. Now, getting off of retail, I'm actually gonna jump into the office space, the office sectors. Office space has been very different, and I'll tell you why. Huge spaces that were rented out in the major metros. Again, I'm going to use New York as my example because I'm here in New York and I know that the best. But I do also follow all the trends, and I do have associates that I work with that also have the same kind of uh, situations happening. So a lot of the bigger spaces in the major metros are either being emptied out or downsized, especially under this pandemic. Again, we were going through a slowdown in this sector as well prior to getting hit with the pandemic. But with everything that's happening and people no longer believing that they need to be working on site in an office at all times, working virtually, have given corporations, businesses, small businesses, a reason to not need larger spaces. Now, not needing that larger space has also created a different scenario. They're either subdividing the spaces and subleasing to other space people, which has created enormous amounts of more vacant space, or they're leaving completely from the city and going again into the suburbs in the outskirts of the city for lower rents in smaller spaces and operating just as well as they could. There's a lot of businesses out there that don't need to be in a specific location to be able to operate. If you're even in my industry, I don't have to have an office in every single town to be able to operate. We do so much online right now that marketing, advertisements, all the data stuff that we do, it's all online. Emails, correspondence, online. So between having a laptop, a phone, a couple of gadgets that do a lot of our online work for us, and a car, we don't need to have offices in every single town. You're going to see consolidation of these offices. They might have an office in every other town, depending on how what the population, the density is of each town, is going to reflect how many offices are there. But the same thing applies for other businesses as well. The other trend that's happening is people are shrinking down their footprint in the major metros as far as their office space is concerned, and opening up little pop-up satellite offices in the outskirts or in the suburbs or closer to home for themselves. Now, it's still a high concern. This coronavirus is something that really has, affected people psychologically, of not wanting to be in the city. And if they don't have to be in the city and they could work just as well as they would have from a smaller satellite office closer to home, then what's the purpose of having those larger spaces in the city? What's the purpose of having such a high expense? That's going to be a trend, and that's going to continue going into 2021, and that is actually going to get worse going into 2022. I feel that that sector is going to have the hardest time, unfortunately. Office. The other thing that I have to mention as well, a lot of spaces, a lot of houses are getting home offices added into them. New construction that's going on has that extra bedroom that's slash office space that people have home offices that they're putting into. So you're having that. That's going to be a tough market. That's going to be a very, very tough market. I've been renegotiating leases since April, and I feel that we're going to be having a lot of the same going into 2021. So that is not going to be a very optimistic outlook, and I don't know how that's going to be done. You might see a lot of this office space actually converted to residential space down the line. They might rezone a lot of these buildings in order to fix a problem that a lot of people are saying as far as not enough housing out there. And they would have been residential spaces to start with if the zoning would have permitted it. But they might, again, full circle, might go back to that extreme. As far as industrial, you're going to see industrial pick up in certain sectors, especially smaller industrial, because you're going to see a lot more things being made in the country, regardless of who's running the country at that during next year. I keep saying that because we still don't know exactly what's going to happen. Trump hasn't conceded yet, and Biden is firm that he's going to be the president. So that's what it looks like it's going to be. But 2020 has proven that you don't know anything until it happens. Don't depend on anything until it actually happens. So I'm very curious what we're going to be looking into in January on that end. But again, I'm not going to get into politics in this show and give everybody an outlook on what that's going to happen. I'm way too ignorant on those items to know, what these politicians are thinking and how they're going to approach things. But that being said, industrial, because of everything that we've gone through and because of the shortages that we had on these items in the past, I could see some industrial expanding more warehouses, more little factories popping up in different places. Not necessarily major metro areas like New York, unfortunately, because of the taxes that we're looking at. But we're probably going to be seeing a lot more of that popping up in the lower tax states. So we'll see. That's going to be a to be continued. Industrial has not been um, a very huge component of the real estate market for the past couple of years, for the sole reason that there was just so much space empty and available. And this has been a downtrend for years, especially in our areas. Like I said, you could go in somewhere in the middle of the country that they can't have enough industrial. But I can only see it from my end and other major metros, because I'm not following the tiny um, areas. But if anybody that has some knowledge in those areas, please let me know what's going on over there. But as far as here, smaller industrial has a very good purpose. The big industrial, factories, warehouse spaces, and that kind of stuff, not so much. However, Amazon is snatching up a lot of warehouse space. So maybe if other online retailers start taking the same path, you might see a boom in that. But that's the one thing I don't have a very definitive or direct prediction for, because I really see most of the, this is not like taking a big leap as far as making a prediction. It's going to be a lot more of the same. Now, I've been hesitant to touch one other item, and this is an item that affects both the residential and the commercial market, and that's the eviction moratorium that was put in place. How this is going to affect us going into 2020? It's going to affect us in a very significant way, because the extended eviction moratorium that started off in March and is going to extend all the way through into 2021 now is a band-aid on a gushing wound that, quite honestly, that wound is infected right now, and nobody's treating it in any way that's needed in order to stop it from, you know, completely killing whoever the wound is on. We're talking about a really bad scenario right now. Landlords that are in the residential market, they are, my heart goes out to them. And that's not from my own personal bias of being a landlord. My heart goes out to everybody right now, because landlords are being treated in a very special type of way. They're being treated very differently than every other sector. I went into the lockdowns that they did on the retail. I also went into what's happening to the restaurant businesses, bars, lounges, all these businesses, as far as them getting pummeled. I'm not taking anything away from all these businesses, because they are really going through a tremendous hardship right now. And I'm not going to say one person's heartache is or hardship is any worse than another's, but the big difference between a lot of those restaurant places, um, lounges, these type of service type of scenarios, the retail places that have been locked down, they have the option. It's not a good option, but they have the right to turn around and close the door, lock it up, and say, everybody go home. We can't afford to keep paying you. We can't afford to keep paying the insurance. We can't afford to keep paying the rent. We're closing up shop. And if the landlord decides to let us open up again after these eviction moratoriums or these mandates and these quarantines are over, we're coming back to business. But if not, we're going to be looking at alternatives of what to do for a living. Not a great scenario. It's a horrible scenario, to be quite honest with you. But they have that option. Landlords don't have that option. They're forced to continue to pay all the expenses on their property while people continue to live in these spaces. Now, it's not a great scenario. It's actually a horrible scenario, and it's a situation that is inconceivable. I just mentioned the restaurant guys. They're not asked to continue to make food and give it out with IOUs or with a false pretense that maybe you'll get the money at one point or another. Instead, they're getting actually loans, which actually is a smack to their face as well. But they're not being asked to continue to work and continue to pay the expenses because you have to. You have no choice. Otherwise, not only are we going to seize all your property, but you can get fines and you can get penalties. And basically, we're going to put you in a hole that you'll never be able to get out of. Because that's what landlords are being told right now. It's exactly what landlords are being told right now. Continue to pay all the expenses you need to. Continue to pay the property taxes. That's the biggest smack in the face right now to the landlords and all the homeowners and the property owners. Continue to pay the real estate taxes. Continue to pay the water bills. Continue to pay all the utilities, the insurance. If you got a tenant that is an absolute animal and destroys your unit, continue to fix all the repair all the damages. Because if you don't, they're going to call 311 and you're going to get fines and you can get penalties. And until you fix the situation, you're going to get compounded penalties. And we're going to bury you in debt and violations and fees. Continue to pay that super. Continue to pay that landscaper. That roof has a leak. You better fix it. Because if you don't, again, you're going to get buried in fees. That boiler busts, better fix it. Because you're going to get buried in fees. Meanwhile, you're being told that these people don't have to pay you. Yeah, the CDC mandate says that it's only the people that are affected by coronavirus, by the COVID disease, pandemic, that are protected by this. However, a lot of states, such as our own here in New York, our officials are all-knowing, all wise officials have said it covers everybody. Nobody could be evicted. So what happened was you had a lot of people that decided they're going to manipulate our system and not pay. And they have no recourse. And a lot of these people, when the eviction moratorium is over, are going to get up, walk away, say good night, thanks for the free visit, and you bet good luck as a landlord to collect your money from them ever. Yeah, you could put a judgment on them, which means nothing. And another thing, like here in New York, you could have undocumented. You're forced to actually have undocumented or illegal aliens that could be in your apartments, because if you didn't accept them when they were applicants or potential renters, you're discriminating, because that's a protected class here in New York. You could have undocumented or illegal aliens that are going to leave your apartment. Where are you going to find them? You don't even have a social security number to chase them. You know, you don't even know who it was that was in your apartment or your house. It's ridiculous. And for some reason, landlords are the only ones that have been put in this position. As I mentioned, restaurant owners aren't forced to keep cooking food and feeding people. Grocery stores are not forced to continue handing out toilet paper and Bounty and soap and potatoes and carrots and whatever, and I get paid for it. Oh, here, take an IOU. No, they don't operate that way. Cash and carry or credit card and carry or whatever. That doesn't apply to landlords for some reason. It makes no sense. It makes zero sense, other than the fact that they're throwing all the burden on landlords. And that's really a discriminatory thing that's happening. That's a class. That's almost like class warfare on a specific class or conceived class, because for some reason, the public thinks that landlords are wealthy and they got money just pouring out of their pockets. Meanwhile, most of the landlords are struggling just to break even or pay the expenses. And in a lot of cases, they're in the red every month and they're pulling money out of their pockets just to sustain, with that hope that one day, just one day, they'll have that piece of property, that building, their house paid off. Maybe by the time they retire, and they'll have a nest egg of potential rent coming in to help them supplement our pathetic Social Security that will be coming in. Maybe. There's a lot of people like that out there. For some reason, they don't count. They don't matter. We're not turning around and telling doctors, you better take care of those patients. Otherwise, we're going to hit you with fines and fees all over the place. Or we're going to tax you on all your medical equipment while you're doing so. They're not being told that. I had to go to doctors over the past few months. They won't even look at me unless I give them all my insurance information weeks before I even go to the doctor to visit them. That's not a human need. That's not a human necessity. And I'm not saying they shouldn't get paid. These people went for a decade to school, paid thousands upon thousands of dollars in medical school, and most of them are trying to get themselves out of their debt. I'm not throwing it on the doctors. I'm just making a point that the government didn't decide to tell them to do that. They didn't decide to tell the restaurant owners to do that. They didn't decide to have all the cab drivers and the Uber drivers go ahead, give rides to everybody, and instead of getting paid, get IOUs. They're not telling anybody to do that. It's only the landlords. And again, I focused on the retail landlords, the residential landlords, but it's not just the residential landlords are having the same problem. The commercial landlords are having the same exact problem. Same exact problem. And I'm sorry if I've neglected to talk about that in the past to the commercial landlords. But all the landlords are put in the same position. But the ones that get the most focus are the ones that have the housing, because obviously that's the hot topic, and you have all the people parading and and protesting and rioting, cancel rent, and going berserk. And the media loves that, so they're over focusing and showing them what's happening. Unfortunately, that's what we're dealing with. It's not a right scenario. So this is going to continue to get worse. And if there's going to be a catalyst, to be quite honest with you, that will drive the market to one extreme or the other, it's going to be this. Because you're going to get a lot of people that are defaulting on their income properties or the rental properties, or even the house that they live in that has an auxiliary apartment or a second apartment or third apartment that they're renting out, that they're no longer getting income on, that they can't keep anymore. And they're going to be the ones that are going to be the first ones to be um, evicted and foreclosed on, because especially the ones that it's not their primary residence. So they're going to get wiped out. You're going to get a glut of inventory coming from there. So what's going to happen then? Because I'll tell you something, with all these mandates and all these restrictions that put in place, the demand for these type of rental units and these type of income is not as high as it was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. You're going to have a lot of people that would have been very, very open to becoming investors that are not going to be so willing to be investors anymore, because they know what they're going to have to go through, especially in areas like ours. I hate to keep, pointing my finger here in New York, but like I said, I'm here in New York and I'm living what I'm seeing right now. This is not just stuff that you're seeing on NBC and Fox News and CNN and ABC or whatever. This is stuff that we're living. This is as transparent as you could possibly get for what the scenario is. And I think that out of all the sectors that we're seeing right now, the one that hasn't gone through the worst yet, and that it's going to be going through the worst, is this exact sector that I'm talking about. Unless they find a way to be able to do some damage control, because they'll never make the landlords whole. But let's see how many landlords they're going to consider as collateral damage and how many they're going to let default, and then we'll take it from there. It's going to be bad. That's all I'm going to say about that. That's my prediction for that sector. Sorry about the doom and gloom. I'm going to say this one more time. Landlords have to organize. They need to get themselves all on the same page, state by state, and then throughout the country, to protect themselves in the best way possible. Because if they don't, everything they know is not going to be the same. It's going to be so much worse than what they're dealing with right now. And this is not to scare people. This is not fear mongering. This has been the trend. And this eviction moratorium has been the cherry on top. And I hate to say this, but I almost feel like the coronavirus, the COVID experience we're dealing with right now, the pandemic we're dealing with right now, has been the excuse that politicians needed to really take it to the landlords the way they've been wanting to for years. that's just my feeling. Like I said, if there's anybody that feels differently, please comment. I'd love to hear somebody give me an argument that's any different from mine. You know, and I hope that somebody actually has a better type of comment than better prediction than I will, and hopefully I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, but I'm not. That's unfortunately the thing. Like I said, landlords need to organize, and hopefully, maybe my prediction for 2021 will be that landlords finally all get on the same page and organize and do what they need to do to have fair rights. Landlords have rights too. Landlords are human beings too, and they need to be treated that way. So let's get away from that. Let's get away from predictions. I gave my predictions already for the entire sector of real estate. If there's something that I've been missing, please let me know. I didn't get into the rentals because rentals are really hand in hand with what I just talked about with the landlord and eviction moratorium. They're going to be in a complete overhaul as well. And vacancies are rising, and they're going to continue to rise. And you're going to have a lot of landlords that are going to be very hesitant to rent to people. So you're going to have a lot of vacancies due to artificial reasons. It's going to be a mess. Let's just leave it at that. We need solutions right now. And I'm going to be making a video with my own personal solutions. Since nobody's giving us solutions other than let's find some rent vouchers, I'll give my own unique solutions. And when you watch that video, you could tell me if I'm out of my mind or if I'm right. But maybe it takes a person like me that's not mucked up in all the dirty politics to be able to come up with some fair and true solutions that will do the best to keep both sides of the equation whole, both the landlords and the tenants. Maybe that's what it'll take. But that's for a future video. This video is for predictions, which we've done already for 2021. And I'm also going to do a couple of things as well, give you a little bit of understanding of where we're going forward with this channel. I'm going to be changing things around. In the past, for years, all I did with the channel before I started talking and doing the vlogs and doing the real estate play radio show, I basically had it as a display for all the listings that we put on the market, rentals, that kind of thing. And that was it. I'm slowly changing that format. I'm putting all future listing videos and that type of thing into our Cicalis team channel in order to keep things a little cleaner on the show. I promise that's not coronavirus. I've said this in the past. I'm a smoker and I cough too much and I need to quit. And that's going to be one of my resolutions for 2021. I'm hoping that this year I will hold to it because I've tried to do this in the past and I think it's due time. That and the fact that I need to lose weight. Because I'm looking at myself in video right now and I've seen some of the videos I've done over the year and I've blown up. I put on too much weight. I need to take off the weight. I need to quit smoking. 2 number 1 priorities. Then everything else will come in place. But that being said, like I said, we're taking a new direction with the channel, and we're going to be putting all the listing and real estate related type of scenarios on our sales and our rentals for on the Cicalis team channel. And we're going to continue growing the Landlords Are Human channel. And I'm so happy to see so many people commenting on those videos and slowly getting a good subscriber base on it. We're going to continue doing the landlord side of the story and a couple other landlord related things on our main channel, but that channel is going to be dedicated just for that reason. And I came to a thought process of what I wanted to do with that channel moving forward. Hopefully, at one point or another, there's enough subscribers and enough people are viewing the videos where it'll become monetized. And once it does actually get monetized, I'm going to take revenue that's coming from that channel in order to do something that will be helping landlords and either a support type of program or some kind of fund for landlords. But we got to get to the point where that actually gets monetized first before we get to, I could jump ahead of myself. Hopefully it does get to that point. Some funds come in, and even if it's $1 or $2, whatever, that's $1 or $2 that will go towards somebody that really needs it. And so I'm not looking to become a big YouTube sensation where I'm making millions of dollars from my YouTube channels, because clearly by the channel that I'm on here right now, I don't have that kind of subscriber base. Maybe one day. But that landlord channel that we created, Landlords Are Human, and if you haven't subscribed to that channel yet, please subscribe to it. It's so important that landlords have a platform and a portal where their voices are heard. And that's the whole intention of that channel. And like I said, once we actually get monetized on that channel, I'm going to start taking revenue from that channel to put in some type of landlord fund or some kind of program. But we're not there yet. We're not even close to that. Maybe we'll get there sooner than later. Fingers crossed for 2021. That's a goal that I'd like to be able to achieve. And that being said, I'm looking at probably on well over an hour and a half. So anybody that's been sitting through me rambling on for the past stream is probably either exhausted or fell asleep already. But before I sign off, I'm going to thank everybody for a really wonderful year. It was great to hear from everybody. I love all the mail that I'm getting from you. Have a happy 2021, a great 2021. 20 times better 2021 than 2020. And hopefully we shut the door on 2020 and look on to very positive and very great things going forward. Have a great night and have a happy new year.